Hello and welcome to Shaunna Cross Tales. I am Shaunna Cross. As I said earlier with a little clip, I was going to be answering some questions on how I'm preparing to intentionally use this space. So, the first question I might have already answered, but I am going to re answer is what inspired you to start Pluto's legacy? And what does the name mean to me personally? Pluto's legacy was going to be an autobiography style for the astrology girls in like 240 years when Pluto comes back to the sign of Capricorn. And I was like, wow, how would my story, right, stand up to 240 years? And so that's when I realized that my original plan needed a little bit of rebirth, a little transformation. And at that point, I decided, okay, instead of doing a nonfiction, I'm going to make this a fictional book. So when I was like, well, that's not, it's gonna have to be fantasy, but I really want to leave my testimony of what it was like. That's when my muse came forward, and I realized that I would be writing a series of books regarding exoplanets. So these are not personal planets, these are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune. These are the outer planets, and I'm starting in retrograde, right? So that's what the name means to me. Um Rolling on, if Pluto's legacy was a person, how would you describe their personality? So my muse for Pluto's legacy is my best friend who passed away in 2022. Pluto's legacy does come from my real life experience of having Pluto in that eighth house where it's supercharged. Um, and so the eighth house naturally deals with themes like death, rebirth, transformation, and then Pluto brings in those themes of death, rebirth, transformation. So it was like pi energy, right? Or square energy, or math not my thing energy, you know what I mean? But yeah, so if Pluto's legacy had a personality, it would be dark, and it would be light. I would think, honestly, as a Gemini rising, and I feel like that because the story does start in such a dark place, and then I tried to write the light as the story goes on, so it lightens. Um, I would say that, yeah, Pluto's legacy would be kind of that twin, like, they can either go super deep or super fun, and, those two extremes meeting in the middle, and that's where Pluto's legacy would be, I think, personality wise. And shout out to my girl Emily. She really wanted to actually interview me for this, but our schedules, we just could not make it work. So she's like, girl, these are my questions. She's a marketer for the dispensary that she works at. So she was like, I need to know. I'm dying for your book. This is what I need to know. Um, and then, what moment or memory first made you feel like this story needed to be told? Um, so My character Tracy in the book is written and fashioned in memory of my best friend Keebler, who incidentally is also named Tracy, but any real life connections to the two are totally fictional for legal purposes, of course. But yeah. So when my mom and my best friend passed away within 2 months and 2 days apart. So in the prologue, Pluto's legacy starts with the retelling of me receiving those two phone calls. So it kind of, spoiler alert, does like this flashback series. I wanted, not only does everybody in the collective, everybody that's alive right now with breath in their lungs, have an experience with death and grieving and the process of, you know, going forward. I was able to heal and find a space of gratitude for my mom, um, my my um, my crystal, um, my emotional support crystal. There we go. Yeah. So I was able to find this gratitude that my mom, had was no longer in pain and the transition process for her. However, my 40-year-old best friend, 40, she had just turned 40 2 months prior to her death. She had a sudden heart attack. You know what I mean? Like, she should still be here. It's 3 years later, and I really could not find a space of gratitude, nor, oh my goodness, um, honestly, like, I could not make sense of her passing, you know. As someone who is a fan of Taylor Swift, Midnights came right after, my mom passed in June, my best friend passed in August. Midnights came in October of 2022, right? So there was that like connection to the twos, and then the Eras toured. So I was learning to reconnect to life with authentic joy, um, as a part of like my soul team honestly came in and they were like, "Are you done?" And I was like, "No, I've got other things to do." And so they sent me on this little side quest to reconnect and find moments of joy, and so yeah, I needed to find a way for Tracy to continue to go on living, somewhere, even if it's just in my head, right? Like, if nobody buys this book, she exists in this space. And I can understand that. And so it's also, there was this, the whole title of the ghosting aspect, because I did feel like, I was ghosted because I have all of these spiritual tools and I was able to see my mom's, you know, what happened with after her passing. And I've had clients because I'm a spiritual practitioner. So I've assisted clients through this process. But Tracy was the one that kind of just disappeared after she passed, and I didn't understand and I couldn't find her. And so the main character also has a hard time connecting and cannot find her energy signature in the way that she's used to. And so I was capturing um that heaviness of what do you do when you have these beliefs wrapped, religious, spiritual beliefs, or these beliefs of after death, and you've experienced, and then you get a curveball. And like, what does that look like? And how do you navigate that space and heal? And so I had to write this because I needed to be able to take my journey through exactly that, and I put it on paper, and hopefully someone else, unfortunately, death is the one experience that everybody will go through. Everybody will experience their own, and I do have the belief that whatever we believe as far as the structure of what waits for us after death is where we go. So if you believe there's a heaven or a hell or a purgatory or a portal to the Akashic realm to do life review and then go either, onto another planet or into another um form, experience, like whatever you believe is where you're going to go. And I not being able to find my best friend after she passed, like where she went, was huge. It created a really big spiral for me, but it also created a space that allowed me to go in and navigate and really look at my own belief systems while I was writing this book, and just kind of check in with some of the spiritual beliefs that I held, and really look at the transformation, because death does bring transformation, and shook my bedrock. So I had to write Pluto's legacy. Um, you know, for one, because I needed, in order for my life to make sense, I needed to know that Tracy was just out there. And then also to look at my own beliefs and the transformation of those beliefs. And so that's why I had to write Pluto's legacy. How do I hope that my readers will feel after Pluto's legacy? So this question is my imposter syndrome. I have been so in my head um because I know it starts dark, right? It does. It starts with death. The whole book is the healing process. So like I had said, I am a big Swiftie, and she has a song, Right Where You Left Me, and it's talking about, being at the table, not being able to move on, and the world's moving on. So, what I hope that my readers at the end of the book, if they are in their own grief journey, I hope that they're able to maybe move on from that and get some healing in their own personal journey, or maybe they finish the book and they're like, wow, that was interesting. It does, because it is a series, it does, each book will be a standalone. So it wraps up. It has a completion. It starts dark and it's light. That's the only thing I'm gonna say about that. But there is a nod. There is a nod to not only the next book in this series, But maybe something else that I have in the works. So yeah, I hope that my readers are left feeling inspired, enlightened, at a lighter space than, because it's such a heavy period of time. And that's another thing, is because this is fantasy, you know, I do want my readers to be able to pick up, and read maybe a page or two, just take a space, of self-care moment for themselves, and disconnect from reality and go into my fantasy world. There is a point, there is a rest world, and I'm just gonna leave it there. It's called Aetheria, so that's what that part of the the book title means. But I want this book to be like that rest world where my readers can take a moment, and just have a connection of enjoyment, even if it's a dark subject. And so when they're done, I just want them to be like, you know what, that was good. I feel recharged. I feel ready to step into my own, transformation, rebirth, and also maybe an understanding, for anybody with Aquarius. If you have an eighth house Aquarius, maybe some of the things that over the next 20 years while Pluto's in Aquarius, maybe some of the things that you're going to have to maybe go through, or and maybe not in the same way, but enough that, not to cause alarm, right? But just to get you thinking, and maybe tap in and ask Pluto, hey, what are we going to be experiencing? And Emily's next question for me is, what themes or truths are you exploring that you think people are afraid to talk about? And honestly, like, you know, it's the whole, like, tabooness, of death, rebirth, transformation, right? Like, death and transformation are very hot topic triggering words. And um so I also, one of my characters in this is non-binary. um it is a multi-point view, so there's a soul tribe. Shay and Tracy are the main characters, but there is this whole soul tribe, so there's like four other characters that are throughout this book and that will be throughout the series. And so after Tracy's death, it impacts Shay, but it also impacts all of these other characters, that are courted. So the truth is, we use the Akashic Records. How I use the Akashic Records as a spiritual practitioner, I drop in, a a tarot, uh there is a tarot spread in the book that I created, because I do use tarot cards. You know what I mean? I have my deck right here. Like, this is my Cellulite wand. When I'm doing my one-on-one sessions, this is in my hands. And then I've got my tarot cards. So, like, and in fact, I've got my tarot cards that I use them so much, and I've had these for that I had to get my own little, case for it. I don't even have the box because I've worn through it. Um, so that's fun. That's some truths and some themes that I touch on. And you know, um, so it does touch on spirit guides. It also does touch on other dimensional beings. So we have a dragon in the story. We do have the spoiler alert. But going forward, I want everybody to understand that, you know, when Tracy passes on and is no longer, here on Earth, um, she has an interaction with a dragon that turns a little romantical, you know what I mean? So, um, yeah, I have a lot of truths and themes, and actually, it's funny because when I was writing this book, I was like, okay, so we have death, we have rebirth, transformation. We do have a little human dragon interaction of coming togetherness lightly, not very graphically written. Um, we also have, let's see, a non-binary character. Yeah, it was funny because I was like, as I was writing it, and because I live in Florida, I was like, I'm writing a book that's would probably be banned in the state that I live in, and I'm doing it anyway. And then to piggyback off of that, right? So, Emily's next question she wanted to know was, is there a character in Pluto's legacy that surprised me as I was writing them? And honestly, yeah, and that would be the fact that when I started writing Pluto's legacy, I had a very clear pathway for Tracy and all of her connections. And then I got, 40,000 words, and all of a sudden, there's a dragon that drops in, and I'm like, where did you even come from? You know what I mean? So, that was surprising. Um, and it was surprising because so I was able to reconnect in the real life, in the physical life, with my best friend, and I feel like and I know, and it's okay if you don't believe this. It's okay if you look at me and you're like, lady, you're crazy. That's fine. Um, I believe that the dragon was sent from Tracy, and if you knew Keebler, you knew that she loved dragons. Part of the whole reason why she was in like the Game of Thrones like fandom was because there was dragons, right? Um, and we had read Mercedes Lakey, which is a fantasy like romance, and so it's like magical and like I think she had some dragons in some of her stuff, and I know Tracy sent me the dragon because she was like, if you're gonna make me, you know, this epic story for me, I want a dragon. And so that was yeah, I was almost done, and so then I had to go back and start at the beginning to incorporate this character that dropped in um unexpectedly. So, Emily, I love you. I love you. This question. What role does transformation play in the story and in your own life? There was a time when I could not even say Tracy's name without breaking down. And I still, I get a little emotional. That's okay. Creating a space for Tracy's story to go on, I was able to take the grief that, and make sense of it and transform that grief into rebirth. I'm not gonna say like I'm still currently uh having the struggle of tapping into authentic joy. That's part of the other reason why I had to write this story, right? Is because reality has went very dumb. Um and and I understand like the Pluto aspects of the transformation, and sometimes you got to get into that darkness and then go through into be rebirthed into the light, and that's where we are. But like I've been doing that on the personal level, and now I'm seeing it on the collective and my reality. So um writing has been one of those spaces where I can connect with my inner essence, my soul vibe, and just shut the world out. And that is self care. That is self care. But I do, this project has given me the space to just weave fate, with my pen instead of watching people weaving fate um for us to clean up after. I don't I don't know how else to put that. But yeah, so self-care and I it is important. I do want to say um you know, when someone leaves or transitions, passes on, it's a beautiful gift to be able to talk about them and not be reduced to tears, right? Like it's it's a beautiful space of rebirth to be able to look at a picture and smile and remember the love and the light and not be so wrapped up in the dark. Um and and the regret and all of that. So, if Pluto's Legacy had a soundtrack, what would be the first song on it? Um, oh, mm, I cannot answer that question. I cannot. However, I can speak to well, so the reason why I can't is because I'm planning on creating a soundtrack for Pluto's Legacy. Uh I just don't know how to do that without getting copyright infringements. So instead of that, what I would like to touch on is the music that is written into the book. How about we do that, Emily? So yeah, spoiler alert. I have already mentioned that. So Midnight's is referenced, the album is referenced, in there. The Eras Tour is referenced. And then also, because there is another artist, it's not just Taylor, there's, Peachka. I think if this book had a soundtrack, I would I would approach Peachka and I would ask for permission to use her protection song. She has a song, Protection, and I absolutely am a fan of all of her work. I get a yes, that resonates with me. Please discern with yourself, with any work of art, right? Like, it's okay if something doesn't hit you. It's okay if it doesn't resonate with you. It's okay if it's not your thing. I get that. Just don't yuck someone else's yum because that's not really cool, man. You know what I mean? That would be a phenomenal choice. If I were to build a playlist and I could get, copyright to use in marketing, um, Flora and Cash, Hopelessly Wanderer, that would be a phenomenal choice to start this book and the music. Any of those, really. Ooh, so what's one thing that I've learned about myself through creating this project? I love that question, Emily. One thing that I learned about myself is that I did not carry with me the English that I took in the 90s when I was in high school. like um I I yeah, I need like some grammar brush up. No, honestly, okay, you want deeper. I think that the one thing that I learned about myself is just how many stories were waiting for me to really step into this role. And I was always writing. Um, as a teenager, I was a tortured poet. Um, and so I always, if I wasn't writing, I would be, telling little stories or making up stories in my mind. So tapping into finding that joy in that creation space. Um, I went in with thinking I was gonna. I knew by the time I actually kind of started this that there would be other books. I knew that this would be a book in a series, and that was my plan. And then I started writing, and all of these other stories started like saying, "Hey, we're here too, and we would like for you to write us." So that I learned about was just how much writing is a part of myself that I didn't even realize. Oh, so Emily knows me too well. Her last question is, what's something you're not ready to tell your audience yet, but hope someday? Um, well, I feel like I've given a lot of spoilers. And I guess if you really want to get the answer to that, you're going to have to follow me and just see. I promise, this is what I will say, okay? Um, I will answer this question one day. I do have some stuff that I could share. I could share, about my experience. I tell you what, I will one day I will go into the beginning. So Pluto just went direct in Aquarius today. So yay. Yay for the end of retrograde of Pluto. One day I will tell you my experience of 2008 and my first experience with Pluto, specifically the rebirth aspect. That's all the time we have. That's all the questions that she gave me, and I thank you for, taking the time and letting me share what I'm working on, how I intend to use this space.